Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. So in this video, we will be learning about Spring Boot exception handling. So let's say you signed up for a project in which the required client is like this, that you have to create a REST endpoint. So that REST endpoint should take two numbers and a string. In that string, it could be add, multiply, divide, and then you have to return the result. So how do you do that? So let's first make the basic REST endpoint and see how we can do the exception handling. So we start with the Spring Starter project. Exception handling. Let's not make it exception, it should be calculator. Let's make the package calculator as well. Next, so here, since we are making REST endpoint, we need Spring Web, Spring Boot, DevTools. Finish. Here we have the project. Let us quickly create one package for our controller. Calculator.controller. Calc controller. Here we are. Let's make it REST controller. Public set double result. The result would be double num1, double num2, and string operation. Not it to get mapping. Not to calc. So it has to be request parameter at request param double num1. Same with these things. Yeah. Now let's make some if statements. If operation dot equals, ignore case, so sum, return num1 plus num2. Else if it is multiply, let's return multiply, and then here as well if it is the requirement, divide this. So we are ready with implementation. Let's make it else throw new runtime exception. Answer would be not a valid operation. Yeah, done. So once this is done, let's quickly fire this up in the Spring Boot web. Go to our browser, localhost 8080. What was the endpoint? It was calc. Let's find the request param format. Calc num1 equals 10 and num2 equals 5, and plus this, and operation equals sum. So we are getting 15. Let's check other things. Multiply 50 Let's make it divide. Is 2. Now let's do something like Expo. So here, as you can see, we are getting this error. So this error is in, we can get the message here, not a valid operation, which we are throwing from here. But at the same time, we are getting whole stack trace of everything. So anyone can see our whole application backend. We know that we are in controller package, we are in calc controller, we are in result function, line number 23. So everything it is throwing, and actually we don't want that. And also most of the time, your clients would not be just using your API in browsers. They would be using it in their microservices. So for that, they need some customized exception, not some random Spring default exception. I hope you get the point. So let's try this here. And as you can see, we are getting the same body. So we need to fix this. We don't want this whole stack trace and everything. This is bad from the security perspective and also from your reputation as a programmer. So create one exception package, create calculator dot exception. Here let's create one class, exception format. So this would be the format in which you want to send your exception. So what we need, so we would be needing private string message. We want to send our message to our client, right? Like what is happening, why it did not work. After that, right, we also need HTTP status. Let's make it HTTP status. We might also need date. What else? So let's keep it like this only for now. You can add it later. Let's generate getters and setters. Format. Let's also create constructors for this. Constructor using fields. Enter. So format is ready. Now we need to make one exception. We don't want to throw runtime exception. That is not a good practice. So let's make one customized exception for ourselves. Let's say operation not valid exception. This would be a runtime exception extends runtime exception. Once this is done, so let's override one method. Don't need all of this, we just need the string one so that we can send the string. System, let's remove this stuff, format this. Okay, so custom exception is ready now. So what is happening is we want to send our exception in JSON format. We don't want it like this. See, this is the JSON format and this is being handled by Spring like automatically. We want to follow similar pattern. We want to send our exception not in form of string but in form of JSON. So let's do that. For that we will need our controller, because controller is the one which will be sending the JSON response. REST exception handler. It's done. Let's make it REST controller. This is REST controller. And now we won't be mapping to GET request or POST request, because we don't want client to call this exception handler class. We want it to be raised whenever some error occurs in our program, during our flow of program, right? So let's make one function response entity. Let's make it object for now. Handle operation error exception let's create new. We have already having our exception format defined. So let's create new exception format. First would be the message. Message would be operation invalid. What is this? This would be date. So let's make it new date. And what is this? This one is okay. This one was date. Before this it was HTTP status. So this is HTTP status. So HTTP status, we need to send what? Bad request, right? Because the request itself is bad. It's not the problem in the server error. As you can see here, it is showing 500 internal server error. There was no server error, but this is what it knows because there was exception raised. So we want to send that the format, it is the fault of the client for sending the wrong data. Once this is done, let's save it to a new local variable. This would be exception format. Okay, that looks fine. Let's create new response entity. Response entity, it would take exception format. And the second thing would be, let's send this again. This thing would be, this HTTP status would be sent in the JSON format. This would be sent in the headers. HTTP status dot bad request. It's done. Let's return this. Hopefully this should work. We have restarted our server. Let's clear the logs. Let's throw this again. Okay, we are still getting the same error. What is the problem here? So whenever the exception is being raised here, it is not coming to this place. So, okay, I did some mistake. We need to handle exception from here, exception handler. And we need exception handler for what? So it should listen to which exception being raised. So here we are throwing runtime exception. So let's make it a runtime exception for now. Runtime exception dot class, and also we need to make it controller advice. This way it will be visible to all the classes and it will be able to catch all the exception raised anywhere in our whole application. So once this is saved, let's send it again. As you can see, now we are getting response in this format. Let's try Postman as well. So earlier it was 500 internal server error. Now let's do it. Now this is 400 bad request. So request cannot be fulfilled due to bad syntax. Once this is done, now let's modify this a bit. So since we have our controller class, now we don't want to throw runtime exception, right? Because we already have our operation not valid exception. So let's say throw new operation not valid exception. The exception would be operation invalid. So once we are throwing that, now let's go to our exception handler. Here we can see we are hard coding our operation here. Let's take it as exception here. So the Spring would be sending exception in this format to the parameter to our class, and also let one more web request. So this is request. Once this is done, now we don't need to hard code our message. We can get it from the exception being raised. And okay, we don't need request as of now. Let's save this and we can try sending this. So this is operation invalid. Let's change this here, operation not found. Let's save this again, send this request again. So we can see operation not found. Once this is done, let's add few more things. So we go to our controller. So we know that it is not only that operation could be invalid. sometimes we need to divide by 0, right? So let's divide by 0. Let's make it divide, and the second number would be 0. Let's see what happens. We are getting infinity here. So now let's do like this. If num2 equals 0, throw new operation not valid exception, cannot divide by 0. Let's save this again here. So once this is saved, send the request again. Okay, now we can see cannot divide by 0. So operation not valid was specifically made for operations of function, right? So let's go to our exception handler, and here we can create new public response entity. Let's make it object, handle divide by 0. It would be exception E. Now here it would be new. Again, we want to use the same format which we built, right? So it will be the class which you will be using throughout the application to standardize your exception handling. So it would be again e.getMessage. So let's copy everything from here. Let's copy this from here. Let's save it to new local variable, exception format, return new response entity, exception format, and http status dot bad request, and we will be handling which exception here. So there we are throwing, let's throw arithmetic exception here, right? As this is an arithmetic, because this is an arithmetic exception. This is an arithmetic exception. Let's go to our REST controller handler. Let's listen to arithmetic exception being raised anywhere application. Not this. Need class here. Let's save this. And save this again. Cannot divide by 0. Okay guys, that's all from my side in exception handling. See you in the next video.